加拿大是一个多元文化和族裔的国家，但由于这种差异，有时使得种族之间产生误解，情况恶化就会变成种族歧视，甚至是仇恨。近几个月，在北美包括加拿大，针对亚裔的仇恨罪案不断上升，因此本台特别同 Global News 合作，为大家专题探讨这种潜行的仇恨为什么会在近期爆发呢？又如何危害到亚裔社区呢？
He fell to the ground and hit his head.
COVID is exacerbate the situation.
Stop spitting at us.
In Chinese.
Stop cursing at us.
From China? We are Canadians, sir.
Pretends to shoot me in the head, basically.
Discriminating against and being spat against.
Kung flu. Kung flu.
Use these terms, China virus, Wuhan virus, and even Kung flu.
Hello. Thanks for joining us for this Global News special on anti-Asian racism in Canada. I'm Tracy Tong.
And I'm Sophie Louie. Journalists across the country will be joining us to share stories both painful and personal.
We know racism isn't exclusively an Asian experience, but there has been an alarming rise in Asian hate across North America.
While COVID-19 has driven some of that anti-Asian sentiment, it's not the sole cause. Hidden hate has long existed in our country, but this wave of attacks has led to a crisis point and a cry for action.
Over the next half hour, you will hear from NBA veteran Jeremy Lin, former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, and Asian Canadian actor Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. But first, our Miranda Anthistle tells us how we got here.
You don't have to understand what she's saying to hear her pain. Xiao Jianxi is just one of numerous Asian elders violently assaulted in broad daylight, completely unprovoked. Some did not survive. 84-year-old Vicha Ratanapakdi was killed while going for his morning walk. In Atlanta, 6 Asian women were murdered in a targeted attack, police describing the suspect as having a bad day. And from being dismissive to being passive, a 65-year-old Asian woman brutally beaten by a stranger in New York City while security guards do nothing. Stomped on, spat on, murdered. All these incidents happening since the beginning of the global COVID-19 pandemic, and Canada is not immune to the hate.
I heard from behind me him shouting, China, Japan,
Chinese democracy.
There are people out there who don't think I'm human, basically.
Between 2019 and 2020, the number of anti-Asian hate crimes went up significantly in Canada's major cities. Toronto saw an increase of 275%. Ottawa, 600%. In Montreal, there was an increase of 633%, while Vancouver saw the highest with a 717% rise in crimes targeting the Asian community.
Go back to China where you came from.
The common thread? Blaming the Asian community for the pandemic.
To have that anger displayed to Asians is really unfair. The enemy is really the virus.
Research done by the Chinese Canadian National Council shows those who reported a racist attack in Cantonese or Mandarin were twice as likely to have experienced a physical assault over those who reported in English.
It's targeted at people who, the racists think are vulnerable and who they think won't fight back.
But the Asian community is standing up. Thousands rallying from coast to coast.
We are human beings. Give us a break. Enough is enough.
A cry.
It is the time for us to be here.
A chorus.
United we stand, together we fight.
A community saying it won't be silent any longer.
That jaw-dropping statistic Miranda mentioned, Vancouver's more than 700% increase in hate crimes, that doesn't even include the suburbs. But in the city known as Canada's gateway to Asia, some people aren't all that surprised.
What kind of things are spray painted or written?
A lot of anti-Asian stuff, a lot of hate, a lot of obscene kind of stuff.
Constable Byron Yee has walked the streets of Vancouver's Chinatown for years, first as a kid, now as a VPD officer, seeing firsthand the alarming spike in racism since the pandemic began and causing concern for his own family's safety.
I didn't worry about my dad coming out here, but ever since COVID hit, I do worry about him coming out here a lot more now.
BC has had the most anti-Asian hate crimes per capita in North America. Trixie Ling was one of those targeted by a man who made racist comments and spat in her face.
I remember thinking to myself, being so angry afterward, that I was like, he spat on the wrong person. That was how it went through my mind when I was so angry, knowing that this have happened to so many people and that it happened to me too.
What starts with words can escalate, like this assault at a 7-Eleven. Racial slurs hurled at a 92-year-old man with dementia, who was then pushed out of the store and shoved to the ground.
Many, in particular seniors in the Chinese community, are more worried about going out and walking and being assaulted than they are even about catching COVID. Now, to me, that's shocking, and it's infuriating.
Metro Vancouver is often thought of as Canada's most Asian city, but the sharp rise in incidents has revealed a racist undercurrent some say has always been here.
I think that it's been a riptide that has shaped this city. COVID is, of course, the latest issue to come in that age, but I think prior to this, you can imagine that it's the issue of housing and residential real estate mixed in with the economy and jobs.
The pandemic brought it back to the surface, but the concern is anti-Asian sentiment will remain even after COVID is gone.
We have to speak up. We have to take up space, because this is not something that we can just minimize anymore, because it's actually killing people.
I can name Kung Flu. I can name...
Donald Trump may have popularized this Kung Flu rhetoric, but he hasn't been the only one saying it. On this side of the border, the once conservative, now independent member of parliament, Derek Sloan, posted a video early on in the pandemic. In it, he questions the loyalty of Canada's top doctor, Theresa Tam.
Theresa Tam, we sent an email out today asking, does she work for Canada or for China?
Sloan was slammed for it, but he refused to apologize. And then there was this in early April. A councillor from Essex, Ontario, posted this tweet saying he tested positive for the Chinese flu.
Other Asian Canadian public officials across the country have faced hateful messages too, in their inboxes and sometimes face-to-face. In BC, MLA Ann Kang was yelled at outside her constituency office and told Asian women don't belong in government. MLA Bowen Ma keeps a record of the many comments that come her way, some demanding proof that she's not a communist, others perpetuating that wet market trope about Chinese food. We all know these attacks aren't right, but racism isn't a crime on its own, and many racist acts don't carry real consequences.
That's right. And here's a stat for you. From 2013 to 2018, 82% of hate crimes reported to police in Canada did not result in any charge. Now, this has led to major underreporting from the Asian community, with victims thinking, what's the point? Our Tracy Nagai explains why hate crime data doesn't show the true scope of anti-Asian attacks.
Hackers bombarding an online meeting for young people, including children, with vile comments.
They started spamming the chat with racial slurs, such as, go back to China, you belong in sweatshops.
While deeply disturbing, attacks like these are not necessarily illegal. 3 sections of the criminal code define hate crimes, including hate propaganda advocating genocide, public incitement or promotion of hatred and mischief related to certain property. But lawyers say meeting the definition for a hate crime under the law can be difficult.
The section requires that the conduct that promotes this racial hatred has to be willful. So intentional, you have to deliberately do this for this purpose.
It doesn't mean that the crimes will go unpunished, but it has in part led to underreporting from the Asian community.
A lot of times is the fear, and number 2 is the unknown whether the police will take it seriously. So I'm here to tell and speak with the public and say we take these things very seriously.
And what has kept the issue largely invisible is a lack of data. Canada's largest municipal police service admits while it does track hate crimes, it doesn't collect figures on other crimes that may be racially motivated.
Even though a racism is not a crime, should we be capturing those as a database for us to reference that down the line? Then this is something that we're seriously considering.
Until then, advocates say silence is not the solution.
We are providing a voice for those who can't speak up, because by staying silent, we are sending the message that it's our right for them to keep on doing these actions.
In hopes that speaking up will one day bring justice.
新冠病毒肆虐全球，成为本国种族仇恨罪案上升的导火线。我们要如何应对这种危机呢？是不是等疫情过去了，一切就能够恢复平静呢？在下一节，我们会来探讨种族歧视的深层成因，如何对症下药，如何治疗这种撕裂社会的毒瘤。